there, everybody. Welcome to Roll Credits. Got a very special episode for you all today. We'll be talking about my 10 most influential films of all time. For starters, we need to talk about the 2005 masterpiece, Sin City. Now, this was a movie that was made against all odds, having Robert Rodriguez and Frank Miller actually work together on the film equally, get the budget for it, get it greenlit, and make something that was truly an adaptation of a graphic novel. The irony is that when this film was made and cut, it actually intertwined a few stories together in a different manner that was actually written by Frank Miller when the graphic novel was made. When you get the DVD, for example, you can actually watch it in chronological order, the way that it happened in the graphic novels. But I digress. I love the way it was put together. It was perfect.
That's all I need to hear.
Now, the reason why it's on my list as an influential movie, besides the beautiful artistic direction of having something that is so neo-noir, black and white, emphasis on certain colors to really bring emphasis to characters or certain scenes, was actually just the sheer aura of the movie. There was something so beautiful and perfect about the storytelling that happened from start to finish. You know, looking at Hardigan's story, for example, was completely heartbreaking. To really see Hardigan come back as a hero after being broken down so badly and sticking with staying alive and coming back to be the hero that he always wanted to be. And then looking at Marv, it's almost like he's the epitome of a misunderstood character. He treats himself as very ugly, especially the way he talks about women, and Mickey Rourke's portrayal of Marv was just so good. And it was one of the few times where I felt like someone could really take an outside-of-the-box character that even looked outside of the box on paper and turn them into this very real character despite how strange or different they may be. The sense of him being misunderstood, it's obviously just the fact that he was a loving person but was constantly being chased and was framed and, you know, was really trying to get away this whole time, and how his heart was just set out for Goldie. I feel like that scene where we see the heart-shaped bed kind of go out into the darkness as the camera zooms out is almost like a perfect description of Marv's soul. And it's just to say now, of course, you know, Frank Miller did an incredible job when it comes to the graphic novels and bringing a lot of these things across. But from page to page, you don't get camera movements, you don't get sound, you don't get certain things, certain motions that really push a point across. So, you know, obviously having Robert Rodriguez and Frank Miller working together on that film was just movie magic. And like my buddy Alex would say, it's lightning in a bottle. And I feel like Sin City truly captured that. So I highly recommend it. And that's definitely the first on my list.
Open up, police! I'll be right out.
Next on my list is a movie from 2003 called Identity. And it's a movie that is obviously highly recommended. It wasn't well known when it came out. It's a little bit of a fan favorite nowadays, but it's still something you have to look for. Very interesting story. It's a mystery thriller that stars John Cusack, who does a fantastic job, who shows up at a hotel where him and many other people who are traveling along the highway get stranded because of a storm and have to stay in this hotel. It's got one of the best twist/reveals probably in all of cinematic history. The whole ensemble cast that we have here of all these characters were just so perfect, you know? So it's something that I highly recommend. It's very hard to describe on paper what you're actually watching when you see it. It feels like a murder mystery, but it's got these stranger elements to it and it's a little bit confusing, but you very much start to see the signs early on that you're dealing with something that's truly special. I absolutely love it when filmmakers, you know, directors and writers can take a simple template of a film like a murder mystery and turn it into something completely different, completely original, and something that can really have you flat on your ass by the end of the film. So if you haven't seen Identity, go watch it. If you're a fan of suspense, if you're a fan of mystery, thriller, great acting, perfect special effects, it really takes the cake when it comes to that type of movie. So check that out.
What do you want, you sick bastard? What the fuck do you want from
So third one I need to mention, it's probably my favorite movie of all time because this list isn't in any particular order, would have to be The Fifth Element. I have a lot of childhood memories, seen that movie many times. My brother and I would repeat what the bartender says, the robot bartender, you want some more? I've always loved that part. It's very, very hilarious. But in the film world, it's fantastic. It's a masterpiece by Luc Besson. It's just got so much movie magic that it's really hard to describe. Now, the story centers around our very well-known Corbin Dallas, who was previously in the military and now is essentially being hired after his life is kind of, in shambles to escort someone who's very important. Along this process, he kind of gets himself into a crazy adventure, but without any comedic elements that make it feel cheesy or pushed or anything like that. It's got a good amount of violence, a good amount of seriousness, some comic mischief. For a movie that was made in the 90s, it has incredible CGI. It's got this incredible world-building dynamic that happens throughout the film. When you look at the fashion, you look at the super tall cities, the cars, just the clothes in general, just even not even the fashion, but just the everyday clothes that we see people wearing in the movie, really says something about how you can really harness that movie magic if everything around the acting is also as good as the acting itself. That includes cinematography, direction, set design, sound design, ultimately making it a timeless movie. So even now, in 2025, you can still go back and watch The Fifth Element and love it and look at it all in awe and have this sense of discovery about everything that's going on. So this is one I definitely need to recommend. So if you can, check it out right away.
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
Yeah. All right, guys, next one we need to talk about is 2006's Silent Hill. Unfortunately, this is a movie that got so much hate, and the reason was because it wasn't an adaptation of the video game that was 100% faithful. Now, we could say the same thing about the first Resident Evil movie, which was horrible if we're talking about adapting a video game. And of course, it had its fun moments, but the Silent Hill adaptation, besides the gender swap between the mom and the dad, it is a beautiful film. So if you're not familiar with the story of the video games, the story itself is pretty interesting. And it's about a family, two parents and their young daughter. And she is essentially starting to see visions of this place, talk about this place in her dreams. And they find her one night sleepwalking where she almost kills herself and mentions a place called Silent Hill. Against the father's wishes, the mother decides, you know what, I'm going to go find this place. I'm going to do some research and go there. And as soon as she drives up the hill into Silent Hill, you already know something's up. She gets into a minor accident. Her daughter's gone. She's hit her head. She's a little bit spacey. But essentially when she gets out of the car, she realizes the whole environment is just covered in this soot and dust, as if there's this fire happening. And as she goes on to explore this small town to find her daughter, things just get crazier and crazier and crazier until the end. It's got incredible cinematography, it's got gore, it's got scares, and if you're someone who hasn't even played any of the Silent Hill video games, it's gonna blow you away. Because there's this air of mystery, you're trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and when the room and the world starts to change, we really know we're in for a ride. And me personally, when I saw the movie for the first time, seeing Alessa come up from the floor with all the barbed wire. Now, of course, I don't want to spoil too much because you guys should watch this movie. But it was just like this incredible moment of, holy shit, this is fucking awesome. So from the start to the finish, it's got that dreaminess, that mistiness. It's got a lot of awesome effects. It's got really great CGI. And of course, the costume design, Pyramid Head is so good. Of course, you should watch the behind the scenes stuff because that's really cool. You see how real it is what you're watching. So that being said, go watch Silent Hill. It's like 20 years old already. They're finally talking about making a faithful sequel to the first movie. I really hope they do. I want to see Hans come back and do something really beautiful with it. And, forget about the idea that it's not 100% accurate to the game. Watch the movie. It's fantastic. You're going to love it, especially if you're a horror person. So check that one out. All right, my next film is Ghostbusters 2. This is a bit of a tricky one for me because I do prefer a lot of the elements from the first Ghostbusters movie. It has a lot more of the magic that they were able to harness, especially with the cast having a lot of chemistry and how things lined up. Obviously, building the Ecto-1, which is the 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor, the fire station, a lot of these amazing things that made the franchise what it is happen in the first movie. But that being said, if I have to choose between the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and Vigo, I'm choosing Vigo. I mean, come on. Don't you remember seeing this film as a young kid and seeing Dan Aykroyd come down into the sewer with this river of ooze flowing, just, oh my God. And I that emotion that I felt when I was a kid, that wonder, that suspense, just being in awe of like, what am I watching? What is this thing that's happening? My biggest gripe with the movie was them changing the car. It didn't have white walls anymore. They put the yellow stripes on the side. It's not the fan favorite. It's not the same as the first movie. Now, I understand their intention behind it. They wanted to make it new. They wanted to make it fresh. But it really felt like just a part two to the first film. So for me, it was like the uniform stayed the same. The office stayed the same. The car should have stayed the same. They should have all been like this thing that it's like, hey, these guys that we remember from last time, it's the same guys. Nothing has changed, just more danger and more terror. Now, despite the changes being made in the movie, they went on to write a really, really cool story. And essentially, it almost kind of picks up not too long after the first film ends. And we figure out there's a new threat. There's something else going on, which we, of course, discover mainly when they go into the sewer to take samples to find out what it is. So, of course, the part I'm sure you will all remember, not only for the song, but, of course, the Statue of Liberty. And that was fantastic, in my opinion. So I would say if you loved a lot of the good 80s movies that came out, even a lot of good 90s movies, and you remember Ghostbusters from when you were a kid, I don't only recommend to rewatch the second one, but go back and watch the first two back to back, because, of course, they're both very, very good. But number two, thinking about the most influential films, it just was a little bit better when it came to wonder and awe for me than the first movie was. So yeah, that's one you should definitely check out.
Taxi!
Okay, guys, we got to talk about a Stephen King adaptation called 1408. Which I'm sure many of you have seen. Many have not, but many of you have seen. It's actually the first of two entries on this list that were a Stephen King adaptation. But this one here, I mean, John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, that duo there in this movie are utterly fantastic here. And the reason why it makes it onto this list for me is because, once again, there's this air of mystery, of awe, of wonder about what's actually going on. Now, the story is about this writer, a somewhat famous writer in Stephen King's universe, who essentially goes to places that are claimed to be haunted. He writes books about them. He's a best-selling author. But at this point, he's depressed. He doesn't even want to work anymore. And then he hears about this place. It's room 1408 at this somewhat famous hotel. And when he arrives to book a room at this hotel, the hotel's manager, played by Samuel Jackson, does not want to allow him to rent the room. And the reason for that is because he knows of the very real dangers that are in this room based on the staff's experiences, based on the history of the hotel. And John Cusack's not having it. He's like, I got to write my book. Even though I don't believe in any of this bullshit, I want to stay in this room and I want to write about it and I want to be here. And he goes as far as to try and tell Samuel L. Jackson's character that he's bullshit, that he's doing it just to play up the reputation of the hotel, of the room itself. And eventually, Samuel L. Jackson gives in. He gives him all the files of all the shit that's happened in the room and says, this is real, you shouldn't be staying here. But, if you're really going to do it, just do it. And he says, my staff's not going to come in. No one's going to come help you. Once you're in there, you're on your own. And he basically proceeds to fall into a world of madness and terror. And without giving away too much, let's just say that what he's experiencing is very real. There's something going on. So I would definitely say check it out. 1408, masterpiece, fantastic film.
Bravo, woman. That is very unsettling.
Next one is probably one of the best British films ever made, in my opinion, and that would be Children of Men. Children of Men is a very, very sad movie without feeling sad the whole time. And I think that the portrayal of the story to make the viewer understand that this is a very shitty world. Things are horrible, it's desolate, but it is what it is, and this is a story that's happening there. And I feel like very few movies actually attain that kind of thing, meaning that they almost allow the viewer to be very comfortable with that world that we're seeing in this story and accepting it very quickly so they can kind of just focus on the story that's happening here specifically in that world. And I think the Children of Men does that perfectly. You know, watching Clive Owen walk into the cafe at the beginning and get a coffee and then step right out, and the cafe blows up because of a terrorist attack, and he seems totally unfazed by that situation. So he just goes on his day, and I think as us as viewers, we also just go on our day and focus on the story that's happening there. Now, the story itself is very interesting. It's in a not too distant future where kids are not being born anymore. And every time the youngest person in the world, something happens to them, or one of the young people, it's like this huge tragedy because they know that once everyone that's alive now is dead, the human race will have been extinct. So, of course, capitalism is still rampant, manipulation, political control. All of these things are even way worse than they are now, but also people don't have any hope or motivation anymore. And what makes it very interesting watching it as a viewer is that, you know, I have a kid now, but when I didn't have a kid, I didn't assume that children and the future of society were all that important. You know, people are just born every day and they live, and like people are around us, and you're in these populated cities. They don't really have any special meaning when it comes to the actual future of civilization. But when you remove being pregnant or having children from a society, the movie kind of shows us indirectly that people don't really give a shit about life anymore. Because they're like, well, what's the point if we're all going to be dead in 40 years or 50 years or whatever it is, or if I'm going to be dead in 30 years and the human race won't continue on. So in this movie, Clive Owen's character becomes indirectly burdened with the responsibility of protecting someone who happens to be pregnant. The first person that's pregnant in many, many years. Now, the movie is very dark, and it has many elements of violence and many elements of action and suspense. And I highly recommend that you check this one out. It's got so many good elements of so many different things. And for me personally, when I saw this film, which was right around the time I finished high school, it ultimately solidified how good the Brits are at making films, because I didn't know much English film back then. You know, I didn't know much French film, like I didn't know much Italian film, but Children of Men really sold me. The Brits know what they're doing, and yeah, I definitely recommend you check that one out.
It's okay.
The next movie on our list, a second Stephen King adaptation, the 2007 masterpiece, The Mist, directed by the one and only Frank Darabont. Now, this film really holds a special place in my heart. And it's not only because of the ending, which of course I'm not going to spoil for you, it's because the movie in general encompasses so many interesting themes. And we're talking about domestic terror, religious extremism, the human condition, and what people do when they're in a very terrible situation. You add all the sci-fi stuff to it, and it's phenomenal. Just great. Very good special effects, great CGI, amazing, amazing sound, and just this overall air of this foggy, misty, mysterious situation. Now, the movie centers around our main character who, during a storm, a tree falls into his house and also lands on his neighbor's car, and they get into a little bit of an argument and decide to go into town together. Now, while going into town, this mist starts to take over the whole town, including their own house, where they end up seeking refuge in a local grocery store. And of course, you know, it's nightmare fuel the whole time. People are scared, people are dying, people are getting hurt. Now, if you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend it. I think that if you love horror or science fiction, mystery, and especially if you're a fan of Stephen King, which is very true to his work, I highly recommend it. And honestly, anything from Frank Darabont is fantastic, but that one in particular is just like chef's kiss. It's just very, very good.
Stoning people who piss you off is perfectly okay. They do it in the Bible, don't they? And I got lots of peas.
All right, guys, we're going to talk about Watchmen. For me, that's Zack Snyder's pièce de résistance. And I think that as much hate as he has gotten and as much love as he has gotten in the DC universe, Watchmen is in particular a DC adaptation that doesn't feel like one, doesn't feel like a comic book hero movie. Instead, it feels like an original story, which of course written by Alan Moore, is about the troubles of being a superhero and the very real things that they deal with. And, you know, you look at Rorschach, for example, I don't think there's ever been a better adaptation of a comic book character on screen, especially when it comes to Rorschach, portrayed by Jackie Earle Haley. I mean, he does so well, especially for a man in a mask. I mean, you know, we're not talking about the Batmans where you see a partial face or any type of facial expression. He really brought that character to life. And I don't know how he did it. I don't know what kind of research he did. He's obviously an incredible actor, but there's something really special about Rorschach as a character that I think very few people would really understand how to bring a character like that to life. We spoke about Rorschach, but of course we have Dr. Manhattan. I mean, that is an incredible portrayal. The CGI looks phenomenal. His delivery is essentially perfect. Now, not to, you know, get too far into that. In general, it's a fantastic movie. I mean, the costumes look real and used. The cinematography is just phenomenal. Sound design is incredible. Music is incredible. You know you're in for a real treat from start to finish with this film, and you see it immediately as soon as you watch the intro. You know, the opening credits, the slow motion, flashing of the cameras. It feels like they put so much work just into kind of the opening credits of the film to really establish this whole world that we're in, the characters we're going to be seeing, and the things that we're going to be dealing with. And as a story, if you haven't read Alan Moore's story, this is another rare film that stays true to the source material, almost frame for frame, and really brings the story to life from page to screen. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. If you're a Zack Snyder fan, obviously check it out. And if you want to see a phenomenal cast of actors portraying these very unique characters on screen and essentially doing it perfectly, then you should watch Watchmen. It's just so good.
None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you.
That's it! You're locked in here with me!
Now, this is a very unique entry for this list, and I think that it's because of the genre. You know, if you kind of look at the rest of the films, they all fit more or less a certain type of movie, a certain aesthetic even. But this one here, it's not the same. And that movie's Waking Life. Now, this is a movie that's very personal to me and my life, my own personal growth. You can almost say that this film was sort of like a form of personal therapy for me. You know, it helped me understand a lot about myself, about philosophy, about my own, you know, theories on life and my own thoughts on things. And I have to put it in here. It's probably one of the best films ever made. And of course, I want to thank Richard Linklater personally for this masterpiece. Of course, Ethan Hawke for showing up to have his cameo. It's a very interesting movie. Essentially, what they did was animate over still frames and some, you know, sections that they recorded to have this beautiful, strangely animated, almost feeling real type of thing. And I think what made that animation so special is that even though it's an animation, you can almost see behind it to imagine what the original frame would have looked like and the people would have looked like and how they moved and how they spoke. And I really think that helps set the tone for the movie. Think a dream sequence during a nap after you've had too much coffee and chocolate. You know, it just brings you to another place through a sequence of conversations and situations that potentially have no relevance to you or even relevance to each other, but somehow create this kind of string of stories that brings you in from start to finish.
Boom, 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 boom.
And I think for me, without spoiling too much, is the best allegory that I can think of for the concept of life and death and what that entails and how it feels, especially if you're kind of sleepwalking through a dream. So I'm not sure what else I would have to say, but I think that if you want to really have some personal self-discovery and think about a lot of philosophical things about life, then I highly recommend it. But it's hard to sell someone on a movie like this because it's not fun, it's not crazy, it's not action-packed, it's none of these things. It's just a very human story. There's really no film like it anywhere, ever. I don't think there ever will be. So if you get the chance, you should definitely check out my most influential film, Waking Life.
Unique that way, Kaveh. That's one of the reasons I enjoy you. You can bring me into that.
Well, that's it, folks. Really hope you enjoyed the show. You can catch us here next Sunday for my top 10 most influential TV series of all time. Until then, take care and have a good night.